Today, we will build a webhook flow with tines. So first, what is a webhook? Well, a webhook is one way one application can talk to another in real time, regardless of what codebase they're running using HTTP protocol. It's a simple way to trigger an action based on an event. In other words, webhook is a custom HTTP callback. So what is Tines? Tines is a no-code automation platform that allows you to automate repetitive tasks. It can automate workflows such as sending emails, creating tickets, updating databases, and lots of other things. So what is Fleet, which we will use in this example? So Fleet is an open source platform for managing devices using MDM, mobile device management protocols. It can also gather telemetry from devices, and devices being laptops, desktops, VMs, etc. It can gather telemetry, which can be used in security use cases. So what is our example IT workflow? So we're going to use an example where a device, in our case, we're going to be running a macOS VM. It has an outdated OS version. So this one's running 13.4.1, and we want to be at, say, 14.4 right now. So Tines will receive a webhook callback from Fleet, and then with our Tines workflow, we will send an MDM command to this device to update its OS version. So a little more information about exactly which feature of Fleet we're using here. Fleet has a recent feature called calendar integration. So by integrating a user's calendar, which can be done from the policies page, calendar events can be enabled here. If a policy is failing, like for example this policy where our OS version is up to date, Fleet will create an event on user's calendar, and user being the end user of the device. And then during that time, the webhook will fire and we will run our IT workflow and update the computer's OS version. So Fleet sends the webhook, and it is the IT admin's responsibility to remediate a failing policy. And here's an example of what the webhook payload will look like. So if you'd like to know more about this feature, you can go to the fleetdm.com webpage, and there's articles and videos covering more detail on this. So let's get started with Tines. Okay, so we got basically a recent account here. So we will create a new story. And can we change the name here? Okay. Webhook automation to remediate OS version. All right. First, we create a webhook action. So webhook is up here. We will call it calendar webhook. And this is the webhook URL. So this is something you would put into the Fleet configuration. And this is all we need. We get the webhook. Next, we will check whether we have an error. So we will use a trigger. Trigger here, we'll call it is error. And we're going to check whether this body contains an error. And this webhook may or may not contain an error, but it's a good practice to make sure you have a way to handle errors coming from webhooks. So in this case, we will check for a rule. We're going to do a rule. We're going to delete all this. going to create a value. So we're going to check for calendar webhook, right? Which is this webhook up here. And we're going to look for body error. And we're going to say, is it, we want to make sure it's not empty. And then we just hook these up. And we're going to leave this as a stub for now. We're not going to go into detail about error handling in this case. We're going to kind of focus on the main workflow. So in parallel to this trigger, checking for errors, we can also check whether the device has an outdated OS version. So in our example here, we saw that the webhook body looks like this: failing policies, ID, and then the name. We could use the ID if we know the ID of the failing policy, but I believe it's better just to use the name in case you want to like copy and paste your configuration to another system which may have a different ID. So we're gonna go with a name variation here. So we're gonna create another trigger. We're gonna call it OS version, and we're going to use a formula. So we're gonna say if this formula is true, and let's click on this. Okay, this lets you write in our formula here. So I've figured this out already, so I'm gonna copy and paste this and then explain it. So we're gonna use a find function, and Tynes gives you a good explanation here. We're gonna use a find function. We're gonna loop over the body, the failing policies being this array over here. And for each item there, we're going to look for this Mac OS version up to date. And so once we find something, we need to convert this to a true false statement. So we just use this little hack here to check the ID, and we return true. Okay, so this is done. We're going to hook this up. Okay, so we got the webhook. We made sure that the OS version policy is the one that's failing. Next, we're going to, we need to get the device details from Fleet. So one thing we need to do is we need to add a credential. Let's see. We need to add a credential to our story. Okay, normally we would add a credential here, but I don't see it. So let's try one thing. Let's try to move this story to our team. We moved it to our team. We still don't see the credential option here, so maybe we need to use the credential before we create it. Maybe that's the easier path here. So we're gonna. So what we're doing here, we got the webhook. The webhook contains our host ID, but what we need for the MDM command is the host UUID, the unique identifier. So we need to make a request to Fleet to give us the unique identifier of the host. So we're going to create a HTTP request. We're going to call it get host. Hook it up, line it up. Our HTTP request will hit this URL. So it's going to hit the Fleet hosts URL for the host ID that comes from our webhook. Content type JSON get, and we need to add a add a header. So an easy way to do that is to go into the raw editor. This is a GET request. We do not need a payload, but we do need a header. let's see, headers. And then we need authorization. And this is where we need that credential. So we're gonna do there. And then this open close bracket is the syntax to use an I2 in Tines. Credential fleet demo API token. Okay, we're using a credential here. We click done. This is all correct. Let me jump back here. Okay, this is interesting. You see, I use the credential first, and now when I jump back, I'm able to actually add this credential here. So I'm going to connect. Let's see. Connect. Create credential. Click that. Okay, that's create credential text, fleet API token. That's correct. And we're going to put in the value. And this is the API. It should be a credential for the API user. A normal user can also get their API key, but it's only valid while the user is logged in. So to use a flow like this, like Tines, we need an actual a token that doesn't get reset, right? It's good for now. And domain restriction connection, that's fine. It's talking about here, so this is good practice to set this here. This token already exists for this team. Okay. Replace, create credential, text, paste it. Save, okay. Already exist in this team. This certainly is not a great user experience for Tines. Let's see if we can figure this out. Create a new credential, text, fleet API token 2, paste, save, okay, save. Credential saved. So let's reload this, see if we can see it. I don't see it. Let's see if we can use this. Fleet API token 2. Okay, here it knows about it. Okay, all right. Getting host information, this will get us back the UUID. Okay, next we'll create an MDM payload. The MDM action we're going to be using is this one. Schedule an OS update. Payload's going to look similar to this. So let's do it. Call it create MDM payload. Connect. What do we need here? We need a, I have this created already, so I'm gonna copy and paste. Okay, Copy and paste, not successful. And then we can expand this. So here's our payload. It's similar to what we had from the Apple documentation. Command, schedule OS update, install ASAP. So this will download, install, and then pop up a 60-second countdown to restart the device. We're going to install version 14.4.1. And then the command UID, every MDM command needs to have a unique identifier. So we're just going to use the tines function UID for the identifier. Okay, next, before we send this command down to Fleet, we need to encode it in base64. So I mean, we can combine these two, but for demonstration purposes, let's just do the encoding in a separate event. Base64 encode. Base64 encode. We basically just need to run the base64 encode function. Down here in the builder, looks like this. Base64 encode, and then the payload from the previous event. Okay, this looks good. And then finally, we actually send the HTTP request to run the MDM command. So call it OS update. OS update, method post. Previous one, get host actually should be method get. Okay, this one's post. We're gonna have a body. We're gonna use the editor for simplicity. So this is our base64 encoded command from the previous step. We still use our token. What did we call it? Fleet API token 2. Fleet API token 2. Okay. All right, so this is our flow. So I believe we're in a spot where we can test it. Maybe we missed something, but let's just try it. So we need the webhook URL. Copy. And then we're going to send this payload. Just RVM. VM is still here, so it should get the MDM command. All right, let's go. Send. Status OK. Looks like it went through. 11111. You see all these ones. Let's jump to our VM. Our VM has not received. I don't see a pop-up here, so let's double check one more thing. Get MDM command. So this was acknowledged. So we should be seeing the restart pop up. It may be running, downloading or running the update, but we should be seeing this pop up soon. If I look at the activity monitor in our VM, I do see the software update is being run. So this gives a confirmation that it is running. So I think the download is already downloaded. Maybe it's still down, or maybe it's still downloading. So from the device, you can look at kind of the disk access for the update command, and then you could look at the CPU usage. So it's eventually, once it downloads and applies the update, we'll see a 60-second restart timer. So I'm going to pause so we can wait for that 60-second timer. I guess while we're waiting for it, let's jump back to the flow, the times flow, and just go through. So in times, you can click this event, and you can actually see things that were sent. So you can see what was sent. Failing policy, this is what we sent. So this is a way to debug. And then you can see we sent what we got from Fleet as far as host information. You can see the inputs and outputs of all these commands, and then you can see what we sent, OS update, down here, what we sent to Fleet. All right, let's wait a second for this shutdown timer to show up. Okay, after some time, we finally got our restarting the computer up here. So the device owner is going to eventually, after some time downloading and installing updates, they're going to see this pop up. And they're able to, if they want to, they're able to kill it. Okay, this concludes our video on the making webhooks with tines. So we demonstrated how we got a webhook from Fleet. I went to tines, we created an MDM command, and then we sent it to this computer to update its OS version.